Hi, everyone. I'm going to speak about something that we're very familiar with. And, I fancy myself as a quasi-intellectual. So I'd like to take an intellectual approach to a topic that seems very common, which is the concept behind mitzvot. I do mitzvot because that's what you got to do. You eat the matzah, you put on the tefillin. These are mitzvot. Mitzvot are basically things that we do. These are stuff that we do. And it sounds simple, like every religion has its stuff, and this is our stuff. The problem is that, and I'm going to be very politically incorrect, okay? Other religions are fake. And because they are fake, they are made up by people. So to get people to join a club, you got to go through ritual, which is the same way that it works in a fraternity. I lived on Fraternity Row, so everyone's got to go through the rituals of the fraternity. It's a bonding experience. But in the end of the day, if you've got a religion that's real, meaning there's really God, and he really made the world, and he really, really wanted to create us, why does he need us to do stuff? Believe it or not, that's a very legitimate question. Like, if the religion is fake, then, it's a club thing. But if there's a creator and he created us little guys and he wants us to thrive, so why would he give us stuff to do? It sounds mundane, but it's a profound question. It's a profound question. Why does God need us to do stuff? Is he lacking something that he needs us? Is God going to be mortally wounded if I don't put on tefillin or if I eat a cheeseburger? So and does he really care? And if there are 8 billion people in the world, does he care if little old me between 6 o'clock and 6:20 go into a Kentucky Fried Chicken and eat non-kosher chicken? He cares about me, and he's going to remember it. He's going to log it. Like, how does that work? Understand why this is like, if you're a thinking person, we're allowed to ask these questions. Why do we need to do stuff? If it's not just to, create that unity and that shared experience, but if is it supposed to do something more than that? So, of course, the answer is yes. But there are a number of points that need to be spoken out. And I'm hoping that by the end of this relatively short talk, we're going to be able to cover some profound ideas that will make your mitzvah observance more meaningful. It'll enhance your connection to Judaism. First, I'm going to mention sort of a basic but profound idea when it comes to God and the world. We can all agree that if our definition of God is the universal definition, he is all-knowing, all-powerful, he is in control of everything, omnipotent, omniscient. So God would need nothing. I need things. You know what I need? I need sleep, otherwise I'll get grumpy. I need food, or I'll be even grumpier. I need to feel nice when I'm in front of the mirror. I need to be dressed well. I need to not be too overweight. My blood pressure's got to be there. I need stuff. And then certain things I don't need, but I want. I want a nicer car. I don't want to drive a jalopy. I would like a phone that has good functionality. I'd like good phone service. I need stuff. As a matter of fact, in a real way, I am far more needy than a newborn baby. The only difference is that a newborn baby can't control their destiny, and in certain ways, I could control my destiny. So if I need a Slurpee, or I want a Slurpee, I go down to 7-Eleven and get myself a Slurpee. But those needs, like a little child, I need a good phone, I need a good car, I need a good breakfast, we are full of needs, like little children. God does not have any needs. You know why? Because he is all-powerful. He is everywhere. And anything that he needs, he can make. Well, how can he make it? Because just very scientifically pragmatic, God does not exist within the universe. The universe exists within God. Now, I can go to the science of how to explain this, but it's very legit what I'm saying. And that's what Judaism believes as well. God does not exist in the universe. In other words, the universe does not exist outside of God. wherever the universe is, that has to be within God. I guess the 22nd scientific explanation is because space and time are the same dimension, and God had to be outside of time to create space-time. So when God creates space-time grows, and it's within God. So God was the external force that acted upon space and time that allowed it to grow. So all that is growing within God. Okay, got that? If yeah. If no. But the bottom line is God doesn't need anything. The newest camera, he can make the newest camera. He can actually go 1,000 years in the future and, bring you back to the past. I mean, that's what it means to be God. You transcend time. That's the beauty of being God. And so, why would God create us? What does he need out of us? So, here's the concept. Take every good character trait that you know of. And we know there are character traits that are considered good, and there are ones that are considered bad. Dishonesty, it would be considered a bad trait. Selfishness is a bad trait. Honesty is a good trait. Selflessness is a good trait. Good traits, positive traits, have their root in reality and honesty. All negative traits have their root in dishonesty. And it's a very interesting idea. I'm not going to get very into it, philosophical idea, but I'll prove it in a very quick way, that negative traits have their roots in dishonesty. Let's say somebody is a braggart. They're a show-off. They're full of themselves. So you say, wow, that person is haughty. That's a terrible character trait. But haughtiness' root is within truth and lies. Why is that so? Because, I'll give you an example. Let's say there were two brothers in a house, and one brother decides, mom is not home, she's out shopping, the kitchen is a big mess, so brother A says, I'm gonna make mom happy, and he takes a broom and he sweeps up the room and cleans up the counters, and he just makes the kitchen really beautiful. And then mom still is not home, so he goes back to his room. Just then, brother B comes out to grab a cup of milk from the fridge, and then the mother walks in, and the mother right away says, wow, kitchen is beautiful. And the mother looks at brother B, who happened to just walk in, and the mother says, wow, you cleaned the kitchen. Thank you so much. It made me so happy. And brother B doesn't say, oh, it wasn't me, it was the other guy. He's like, yeah, my pleasure. I love to do whatever I can for you. Is he showing off? Is he showing off, like, look at what all that I did? No, he's lying. He's lying. That's a lie. What happens is when a person takes credit for their brains, for their good looks, for their talents, that's a lie. Because who gave you your good looks? Those high cheekbones, those big baby blues. Who gave that to you? Who made you stronger or taller than the next person? That's God. So when a person shows off, it's not just haughtiness, but again, its root is dishonesty. Understand this idea? There's much more to be said about it. Okay. So the Almighty is the source of all good character traits, which means all traits of honesty. All honesty and goodness comes from God, to the point that it says the seal of God, the seal of God is truth. Wherever you see truth, God's there. Whenever you see somebody who is lying or telling a lie, that God is pulling away, or that person has rejected God. Okay? Now, part of the character traits of truth are the act of giving. When I give, and I'm generous, and I have a good heart, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. When I take and I'm selfish, that would be the negative. That would be the flip side. The Almighty, as part of his truth, is goodness, which includes giving. The only thing is that when one gives, what do you need? You need a recipient. You need a recipient to give to. You don't need, because you don't need to give in the first place. But the way that goodness manifests itself is by giving. So therefore, God creates us, all of us, specifically because he wants to give us stuff. He wants to be good to us. He created mankind because he wants to be good to mankind. And not just to mankind, but to animals in the world. This is God manifesting his character trait of giving. It's not that he needs anything. God doesn't need. But God wants to give, and therefore God created a recipient. And you, Jamie, you, Naomi, this trait of giving needs Alexei to be there. Because if Alexei disappears, then there's no giving, okay? So now we have a question. So God wants to give us. So guess what? Give us, make us rich. Give us mansions, give us nice cars, give us abundance of food. God, you say you want to give. You said your character trait is to give. So then, just give. Why do we need mitzvot? In other words, if we think of mitzvot, commandments, as a way to earn stuff from God, God says, do this and you'll get that. Why does he make us do stuff? If the whole reason that we're created is because God wants to give us, so then just give us. End of the story. Why do we need to keep Shabbat? Why do we need to keep kosher? You want to give, give. You hear the question? And the answer is a very beautiful and profound idea. I'm going to give you the Aramaic term, then I'll translate it. The Aramaic term, Talmud's written in Aramaic. The Aramaic term is called Nahama de Kisufa. Nahama, the word Nahama means bread. De Kisufa means of embarrassment. The bread of embarrassment. The bread of shame. What's the bread of shame? The bread of shame is when you're somebody who keeps having to take with their hand out like this, oh, please give me, please give me. Eventually, it's just an embarrassing thing. I'm embarrassed that I have to keep taking. It's not fun. It doesn't feel good to be such a taker. So for example, let's say somebody knocks on your door, and by the time you open the door, the person's gone, but there's a box, and in the box is a new phone and maybe a new computer and very expensive, and it says, gift to you. It's like, oh, wow, that's so much fun. Wow, thank you. I don't know who my anonymous donor is, but thank you so much. What a benefactor. The next day, knock on the door. Here, car keys. That's for you. Next day, another keys. Here's a mansion for you. How do you feel by day number 3? You may feel like really great, like, wow, I'm becoming wealthy overnight. But on the other hand, you feel like, but what do they want? Why are they giving this to me? That's called the bread of embarrassment. When I keep getting things for free, it's embarrassing, it's shameful. So ultimately, we would rather earn what we get. It feels better. It is greater pleasure to receive after we've earned it than to take a handout. Now, it's interesting. I just want to say that nowadays, where we have like these game shows, you have these game shows, and you come and you spin the wheel, and you get 10,000, 50,000. It's a weird phenomenon because it actually glorifies the act of taking in a way that we're supposed to be a little bit shameful of. Like, we're supposed to not want to be takers who love freebies. As a matter of fact, the Talmud even says, Sone matanos yechia. If you hate receiving free gifts, you have a life. You have a better life. If you have a better life, if you're always out there looking for the freebie, that's not a good life coming up. So, if that's the case, Hashem says, I want to give you. I want you to have pleasure. I want to just give. But I also want you to enjoy the giving. And you're going to stop enjoying it if you keep getting it for free. So you know what I'm going to do? Listen up. I'm going to have you earn the stuff I'm going to give you. I want you to earn it. You're going to do things, and based on what you do, you're going to earn this tremendous reward. Now I want to say something. The kind of reward, I'm using this word, or the kind of pleasure that God can give us is infinitely greater than we can imagine. There's no way that we understand that kind of pleasure. And that is within the capability of God to be able to give us pleasure, as it says in the pasuk, it says in the verse, Ayin l'ra sa'elakim zulasecha. No one but God can even imagine this kind of pleasure. It's so huge. And it's interesting, by the way, if you look at the Quran and you look at the pleasure that the Quran and Muhammad promise, all those pleasures are very worldly pleasures. They're very human pleasures. It's almost as if the writer of the Quran couldn't think outside of the box. So, if in this world pleasure is one virgin for whatever reason, that's a pleasure. So there'll be 72 virgins in the next world. So 72 of earthly pleasures is still just earthly pleasure. Streams of wine is another thing that's promised in the Quran. Okay, I mean, it's good to have an abundance of wine if you happen to like wine, but that's still an earthly pleasure. You haven't sort of transcended the box of base animalistic pleasures. The pleasure of wine, besides intoxication and then vomiting, is the pleasure of the taste on the palate. That's a monkey also enjoys tastes on the palate. That's why he runs after bananas, right? Enjoys it, right? But in Judaism, we say, no, the pleasure that we're talking about is so much greater than a simple earthly pleasure. And God says, I want to give to you things that way transcend these very base pleasures. But I know you're going to want to earn it. So I'm going to give you mitzvot. Now, the mitzvot that Hashem gives us in general, while some of them may seem burdensome, some of them may seem difficult, the truth of the matter is, between you and I, it is a joke compared to the reward that we're supposed to be getting. So let's say there's a mitzvah to light Shabbat candles. It's actually a rabbinical mitzvah, but a rabbinical mitzvah is a mitzvah because the Torah says to listen to the rabbis. Okay, I lit Shabbat candles, and I get this tremendous reward. How hard is it to light 2 candles? Really? That's right. Imagine if I say, if you light 2 candles, you get $1 million. Really? Like, what's the catch? No, just got to get matches. Okay, done. Or a lighter. Okay, I got that also. Got to get candles. No problem, I got candles. Now light them. Oh, and say a blessing. Really? That's the whole... Put on tefillin. Okay. After one day, okay, how do I do it? And then at the end, after you do it a few days, like, wow, it takes me like, if leaving the prayer aside, putting on tefillin takes about a minute. 2 minutes maybe if you're slow. These are quick. And for that, I get a reward that transcends anything that I could ever picture. That's crazy. It's so minute compared to the reward that is given. It's very much like a parent does to a child. I do this to my kids all the time. I incentivize things for them because I want them to improve. I want them to do great things with their life. And the incentive is always greater than the task that I ask them to do. And very often the task that I ask them to do is really just for them. So I'm incentivizing them to do something for them. Like when I say, clean your room, like who wants to live in a dirty room? And you can ask my kids, even if everything's strewn about, they feel good when everything is in order and everything's in its place. And sometimes I'll incentivize, okay, if you make sure your room is clean for a week, X, Y, and Z will happen. So I'm incentivizing them to do things for themselves. And what I'm giving them is far more than they would have gotten if they had been in the real world and cleaning their own cubicle. That's the way that God looks at the world. I'm going to give you stuff to do. And most things, not all, but most things are relatively easy and some are easy and fun. There are some that are more difficult. The two that come to mind would be circumcision and perhaps kosher when you're traveling and you want to eat in a restaurant. But even so, compared to what that reward is, it's considered minute. So Hashem says, I want you to do mitzvot. And through mitzvot, you're going to achieve this reward. But, and here's next step. I could have given you meaningless things to do. Meaning, I could have said, look, I want to give you pleasure. And I would do it for free, but I don't want you to have bread of shame. So I'm going to make you do things. So you know what I'm going to make you do? I want you to stand on your head and clap your feet together for 5 minutes every day. And through that, you're going to earn infinite reward. But what is that accomplishing? That accomplishes nothing. So the Almighty did something even more profound. He said like this, I'm going to give you stuff to do, but the things that I want you to do, these mitzvot, they're going to accomplish something remarkable in this world. They're going to change the world. You see, says the Almighty, the world has its ups and its downs, and there's wickedness, and there's a virtue, and there are people who are sinners and people who are saints, and there are nations that turn to the dark side and send people to gas chambers. I want you to make the world a better place, and that is a meaningful mission. And if you accomplish that mission, then I will give you the reward. So you're not just standing on your head, clapping your feet together, or turning around in circles until you're dizzy and you fall. I'm going to give you things to do that make the world a better place. And then you and I have become partners in the universe. Now that feels good, because no one wants busy work. If you're a kindergarten teacher and you want to go out for a little snack, what do you do to the kids? You give them busy work. But the moment a kid gets his busy work, the kid resents it. Like, I don't want busy work. I want something that is meaningful. And so the Almighty said, the work you're going to do is going to change the world. So how do these mitzvot that we do change the world? How does that work? Well, the answer is, some mitzvot are obvious, how they make the world a better place. Those mitzvot are don't kill, don't steal. I don't have to explain to Jamie or Alexei or anyone else here how not killing makes the world a better place. It just does. And those are mitzvot that are so obvious, they're so universal, that practically every religion has some variation of these mitzvot. Practically every religion does. They're hardwired into us. We want to make the world better, so we don't kill each other. We don't steal. Hopefully we don't commit adultery. Like we're hardwired to do these mitzvot. My question for you is, what about the ritual? What about the mitzvot like put on tefillin, or don't eat milk and meat, or don't wear wool and linen together? How does that mitzvah make the world a better place so that I'm doing something that's beneficial and not standing on my head clapping my feet together? Understand? How is keeping kosher not just busy work? And if your answer is going to be, well, if you keep kosher, you'll be healthier, I promise you that's not true. That's one of the big mistakes. There are non-kosher foods that are healthy. Plenty of insects are full of protein and they're not kosher. And plenty of schmaltz herring is not healthy and it is kosher. Kosher and health do not go necessarily hand in hand. They don't. Yes, there are examples of how pig or swine, pork, you can get trichinosis from it. So, and some shellfish can be poisoned. And I mean, there are examples, but there are examples of milk and mayonnaise giving food poisoning. So that's not why. So what I want to do in the last 10 minutes is allow us to peek behind the curtain and figure out how mitzvot, which sounds like a ritual, is really there to make the world a better place. But in order to understand this, we have to understand the following. Let's say there's a person who has a very nice voice, and they go to Juilliard music school, and they apply, and they audition for the school, and they actually have a gorgeous voice. Like the person doing the interview says, wow, I've never heard somebody with as nice a voice as you have. Welcome aboard. And then the first day of class, the teacher begins to do warm-up exercises. And as everyone's doing these warm-up classes, this person who had just interviewed, who they said had a stunning voice, so this person, let's call it a he's sitting there and he's like, okay, let's get this over with. And the teacher says, why aren't you doing these exercises? And the person says, oh, come on. Those exercises are for the regular people. They need the practice. But me, you already told me I have the nicest voice you ever heard. You already said that I'm an awesome singer. Just give me my part and I'll sing, and I'm ready to just jump right in. And the teacher says, you arrogant so-and-so. You think that if you want to sing in the Met one day, it's good enough just to have a good voice? You think that's all it takes to be a professional? You want to be professional, right? Do you know how many skills that are involved? You have to learn how to project your voice. You can have a nice voice, but it doesn't project. You have to know how to enunciate letters and words, know how to divide them up so you tell a story. You've got to have the right body language. You have to know how to interact with the other people who are on stage with you so it doesn't seem like you're singing solo even though the stage is full. There are so many skills that you don't know. Yes, the raw skill, you got to know how to sing. No question about it. But the nuanced skill to make you a professional, you're far from that. So start doing those exercises. Says the Almighty, the raw mitzvot, the raw commandments, which the whole world has, that's don't kill, don't steal. That's great. Yeah, you want to be a good person? That's great. But that's universal. Everyone's got that. But if you want to be my partner in making this world better and doing this tikkun olam to fix the world, to make the world amazing, it's not good enough to do the basics. You've got to accomplish the nuance, and that happens by doing mitzvot. How does this work? So the idea is like this. Each mitzvah targets a midah. The word midah means a character trait. Each mitzvah targets a character trait that's supposed to make me a wonderful example to the world. So it's not just a mitzvah to make the world better, but it's a mitzvah that allows me to teach the world the very definition of goodness. So let's take milk and meat for a moment. Very simple example. So why can't I eat milk and meat? What is so nuanced about not eating a cheeseburger? So in order to understand this, you have to know that mitzvot are profound. They're not just do's and don'ts. There's always meaning behind it. So let's speak about the meaning behind milk and meat. Milk always represents mercy in the Torah. Israel is called the land of milk and honey. In Shir Hashem, it speaks about the milk that the young suckles from. Milk is always about mercy. That's why in Hebrew the word chalav has within it the word lev, or lev, which means heart. Milk is always about mercy. As a matter of fact, a mother who nurses, when the baby nurses regularly, the milk comes in on schedule when the baby needs to nurse. That's an amazing thing to think about. My wife will tell me, it's 4 o'clock, baby's about to wake up. I say, how do you know? She said, well, I'm ready to nurse. My body just told me I'm ready to nurse. And I know the baby uses the schedule. So the mother's body works out according to the schedule of the baby's needs. And if the baby decides to have a random midnight snack that's unscheduled, when the mother hears the baby crying, extra milk comes in. A milk reserve comes in order to feed this baby. Milk is all about mercy. It goes much, much deeper than that, by the way. When the mother nurses, right when the baby's born, it's not milk that comes out. It's something different called colostrum, which protects a baby with antibiotics for the first few days. And then when the baby has enough antibiotics to protect the rest of its life from certain diseases that the mother manufactures in her internal pharmacy, then it switches over to milk. There's much to be said. Meat or killing an animal always involves a level of strictness or cruelty. Meaning, the Torah does not demand that we are vegetarians, but the Torah does acknowledge the fact that life has meaning, even the life of an animal, even the life of a creature. That's why there are many, many, many mitzvot in the Torah that involve animals. You're not allowed to hurt an animal. You can't rip off the limb of a live animal. If you have a donkey and an ox, they can't be strapped to the same yoke because one's going to pull harder than the other. When it's time to eat, your animal has to eat before you. There's many, many laws. We acknowledge that animal life is life. However, it is permitted to kill an animal to eat it. There are reasons why, not to get into now, but we acknowledge that it involves cruelty. And that's why even when we slaughter an animal, the knife has 5 major laws so that the animal shouldn't feel that it was even cut. They're known as Shia, Drasa, Chalada, Agram, and Ikar. 5 laws, and if you do it wrong, then the animal is not kosher, it's worthless. Because we want the animal not to suffer, but we still acknowledge. We could still acknowledge that it involves cruelty. Says the Torah, don't mix milk and meat. Don't mix your mercy and your cruelty. Or don't mix your mercy and your strictness. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? The Torah says something very profound. It says that if a person has mercy on someone who does not need that mercy, then you will end up being cruel to someone who does need your mercy. When you skew your scale, when your compass is not calibrated, eventually it becomes the opposite. I'll give you an example. I want to paint an image for you. Imagine you're looking into the viewfinder or a viewfinder of a camera, and you see a little dog, cute little dog, and this dog is wearing a little sweater that it hates because the owner put on it a sweater, and it's eating delicious meat from a bowl, a nice silver bowl with its name on it that it can't read. And you look at the viewfinder and say, wow, whoever owns this dog must be so merciful. Look at how it takes care of the dog, and look at how it feeds the dog and clothes the dog. Wow, what an amazing owner. But then the camera pulls back. It gets further and further. And suddenly you see in the wide angle that behind this barracks that the dog is eating this supper in, 16 feet behind it, is electrified barbed wire. And behind that are skeletons of human beings who would do anything for a potato peel, but none will be forthcoming because you are looking at a concentration camp. And many of the Nazis had dogs they treated like little princes and princesses. And yet, they had so much mercy on this dog that didn't ask for it and that doesn't need it. What happens is their internal measuring stick got skewed. They're so merciful on the dog, they end up being incredibly cruel to human beings that need their mercy. Don't mix your mercy and your cruelty. I want to tell you something. This is a very profound idea because every nation is judged in history by the milk meat idea. Who received the compassion of that nation, and who was the nation strict on? You just look at Israel. Who's getting the compassion? Is it Israel or is it Hamas? And the nations who choose sides are really choosing the milk meat idea. When you have so much mercy on those who maybe don't deserve it, you end up being cruel to those who are trying their best. Let me give you another example of this. There's, when I was in LA, I used to live in LA, there was a big billboard that was put up one day on Wilshire Boulevard. And that billboard had a split screen, and half of the billboard had a big pile of dead chickens. And the other half of the billboard had a big pile of dead bodies from Auschwitz. So split screen, pile of dead chickens, pile of dead Jews. And on the top, the caption was, "What's really the difference?" And on the bottom, the word PETA. Now, if you don't know what PETA is an organization that stands for the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And they were trying to say, have mercy on the chickens. And then the next day, all of these Holocaust survivors, many of who live in condominiums and in apartment buildings in Wilshire, rolled up their window shades to see a billboard that could have come straight out of Nazi Germany. What's really the difference between a bunch of dead Jews and a bunch of dead chickens? You have so much mercy on these chickens that you end up being cruel to human beings that have been through hell. Don't mix up your mercy and your cruelty. I actually met the person who made that billboard. I couldn't believe it was a Jew. And she was doing a birthright. And I told the story, and she came to me proudly. She said, "Yeah, by the way, that was my idea." I said, "Really? How could you? Do you know how many people you heard?" Thankfully, they took it down right away because there was tremendous negative feedback. But who gets your mercy? Who gets your cruelty? That's a big deal. Hitler used to say, "I want to protect Germans. So anyone who is mentally disabled, we have to gas because they're going to water down the gene pool of the Aryan nation." Gas chambers were originally tried on the infirm, on the disabled in Germany. Those were the practice. So who got their mercy? Who got their cruelty? You end up being merciful to the people by being cruel to all those who can't fend for themselves. Even as a parent, the milk meat question is a big deal. One of my kids keeps running in the street. So I said, as a little kid, I said, "Stand in the corner. You keep running in the street and I tell you not to. And God forbid there's a car going to come." And the kid's howling. And just then a neighbor comes to borrow some sugar. So I said, "Sure." And the neighbor's waiting by the door as I get the sugar. And when I come back, the neighbor says, "Thank you so much. And I hope I'm not out of place," which means that you are. "But let him go. Just let them go. Come on. Whatever they did, let them go. Look how much they're crying." And I say, "Oh, so you're gonna watch them when they run into the street next time? Or are you gonna go in the ambulance with them when they get hit?" Don't mix up your mercy with your cruelty. That's why when the Torah says don't eat milk and meat, the Torah says it in a very unique way. And I'm going to finish with this. The Torah says it in a very unique way. It doesn't say don't eat milk and meat. It says don't cook a kid in its mother's milk. What a weird way of saying don't eat a cheeseburger. How many times am I going to take a kid, a baby goat, and cook it in its mother's milk? But the answer is the Torah wants to give me the most warped case of taking mercy and warping it by making it cruel. You take the milk that the little kid was supposed to suckle from, was supposed to gain its nourishment from, and you take that kid and you cook it in the milk that was supposed to give it life. Instead, you give it death. Don't mix your mercy with your cruelty. The idea behind mitzvot is mitzvot are there to teach me moral lessons. Whether it's about honesty, whether it's about anger, every mitzvah, there's no such thing as ritual. That's a mistake. People think, "Oh, I do all the mitzvot, the moral mitzvot I keep." So I say, "Oh, that means you keep all of them." because every mitzvah is targeting a moral idea. And not only every mitzvah, but even minhagim, which means customs. Actually, when you learn sophisticated Judaism, you'll learn that these mitzvot are targeting moral ideas. There's reason behind it that's supposed to be transformational. That's supposed to transform us, to transform the world, in order we can come close to earn that reward and not just stand on our head clapping our feet together, but be partners in creating the most beautiful world. So that's a little bit of the deep idea behind mitzvot. I hope you enjoy this and you got a lot from it.